If developing Azure for SAP was a story of innovation, then delivering SAP in Azure is really more of a story of collaboration.
I'm Jason Warnke, part of the Accenture Global IT organization, and I'm glad to be here today with Eli Lambert, who leads our global SAP IT organization, and Anand Raval, who is the platform lead for SAP in the cloud. We're here today to talk about Accenture's experience along the way, lessons learned, and what's next for SAP at Accenture. Thanks for joining me today, guys. Let's get into it.
Thanks, Jason. We're definitely glad to be here today.
Okay, great, Eli. Let's start with you. Going to ask a few different questions here. Maybe you can expand on a few of these. First off, how is Accenture actually using SAP? How has it grown? How are we leveraging it as a platform? And how are we running finance on the platform? Maybe you could start there.
Sure. Thank you, Jason. So, our strategy for our SAP platform is, really to help Accenture stay ahead of future business needs, right? We look at this across a couple dimensions to make that happen. One, we have SAP as our single global instance, which gives us that single source of truth that many business leaders across enterprises are looking for. This helps us have that instant reporting across our business dimensions that helps us read and react to any business environment that our businesses face. Also, staying current is, and treating our SAP platform as an asset is huge, right? SAP is continually innovating new capabilities, and it puts us in a position to, staying current is really orchestrate which capabilities we want to bring in and leverage for our business. And finally, SAP, from a staying secure continuously is, our mantra, right? You number one, stay a foundation of, for us, SAP and cloud exceeds the highest levels of security standards, and we're always running on, the latest software versions. So with that, we run SAP we run finance on SAP, but we also treat SAP as our overall master data enterprise backbone. We use it for, core functions within finance like statutory and management reporting. We look ahead with our forecasting capabilities and also from a global consolidations perspective. But we also kind of work around the edges in terms of other modules being able to adopt recently around, treasury, tax, and real estate. So, generally it's the engine that powers, our enterprise business, but we also, use that as an orchestration for running a financial close engine. SAP is our engine for running our finances. A major part of that is the overall financial close that we operate every month and into every quarter that helps us get to our external results. And so as a framework, that's generally what we use for our SAP platform. So thank you, Jason.
Yeah, so maybe you touched on a few points, but maybe you could dive a little bit deeper on what compelled us to start moving what sounds like a really complex environment that is so critical to us to the cloud.
Yeah, so as we all know, the cloud strategy at Accenture is all goodness, right? For any of our applications, cloud provides scalability, the ability to move fast, with agility and, respond to business needs and scale up and scale down our environments. But it also lets us be secure, right? So cloud generally achieves those benefits. Now, why SAP in the cloud is better? SAP has been moving to a connected ecosystem over these few years. And, while we have our main S4 in the cloud, as we'll hear about coming up here, we're also able to tap into, whether it's SAP Analytics Cloud or a whole host of other ecosystem of services and capabilities. So Ariba, Fieldglass, and many other, security and supporting enablement. The other thing that's important about cloud is getting from, the integration with our entire ecosystem in our landscape. It helps us to standardize a lot of our integrations with all of our ERP platforms across our landscapes. But why Azure as a cloud choice for us, I want to hand it over to Anand to actually let us through that transition to talk about why that was best for Accenture.
Thanks, Eli. So for us, the journey to the cloud really has been a story of innovation. When the cloud was ready for SAP development-sized workloads, we moved them to the cloud. As we started to see the benefits of running SAP in the cloud, we saw the opportunity to move the rest of our landscape to the cloud and achieve the benefits Eli just spoke about. We also saw an opportunity to become a market maker for running SAP production-sized workloads in the cloud, and can do so by working with a strategic partner. We saw the investments Microsoft was making in developing enterprise-ready operations architecture, things like high availability, disaster recovery, and cloud backups. We also had the deep partnership with Microsoft from the Office 365 and Teams work we were doing together. So working with Microsoft to co-innovate and deliver SAP in Azure as an enterprise-ready capability really was a natural fit for us.
Thanks, Anand. A great overview of our journey to the cloud for SAP. Can you tell us about the team that works on and supports SAP? What skills do they bring to the table? Where are they located? How do they work together? And how do we collaborate across platforms? You mentioned there SAP and Microsoft. So I know there's very two strategic platforms. Tell us about that collaboration. So a little bit about the team, and then a little bit more about the collaboration on these very strategic platforms.
Yeah, absolutely, Jason. If developing Azure for SAP was a story of innovation, then delivering SAP in Azure is really more of a story of collaboration, right? In order to make it happen, it truly took a full ecosystem partnership with our core partners, SAP for its software and Microsoft for its Azure cloud platform. And all three organizations brought their vast resource pools to bear in order to design, build, test, and deliver the final product. From an Accenture side, we had a follow-the-sun model, leveraging our global delivery network in locations such as the Philippines, India, Spain, North America, and Argentina. We had a highly talented group of resources with core SAP skill sets for SAP Basis and HANA database administration. We also had a team members bringing cloud environment delivery and cloud network skill sets, all also very relevant for this type of delivery. So it truly was an incredible global multi-skill set and multi-vendor effort to accomplish our goals.
And I have to imagine with that really rigorous program, there had to have been some challenges and then some lessons learned from this journey. Could you expand a little bit about those challenges that the team encountered and how you guys worked through that?
Oh yeah, we definitely learned a lot through this process. The biggest challenge we had to face was developing the enterprise-size operation architecture to run our business. We needed the scale and capacity from Microsoft while also working with them to design for our very demanding requirements. Accenture, a company with over 500,000 people, we have to have very certain specific things in place for us to be able to manage an organization that large. The benefit for us was that we had built such strong standards with our on-premise architecture that we already knew what we were striving for, and we weren't really starting from scratch. The other point I'd also call out is how critical it is to have the right engagement with leadership from both vendors. So we had a direct line to senior Microsoft leadership as well as SAP leadership. So anytime we ran into an obstacle, we knew they were a phone call away to help us move forward. So I'd really say those are the main challenges that we face and the lessons learned through this process.
That's great. Eli, we're going to come back to you and talk a little bit about benefits. So how are these changes affecting and helping us internally and externally?
Yeah, excellent, Jason. So moving to cloud, and especially the SAP and Microsoft Azure collaboration, is really about a lower total cost of ownership. And we definitely got what we were looking for in terms of, we've been able to take out a significant amount of cost in our business, but it also gave us the flexibility and agility to do more. As you're well aware, we've had a recent growth model focus, and all of the different dimensions that we're changing our business and transforming at once, we're able to spin up all of the, for example, test environments, put all the different, demo and performance testing and all the different integration, spin that all up for all of our focus areas for this transformation at a much lower cost and at a speed and agility that we would never been able to achieve in the past. So that goes directly to being able to operate an SAP enterprise instance in the cloud at scale. Actually, just recently as well, we've had a growth in our business, obviously, and we were able to work with Anand and the technical team to move from a 6 terabyte landscape to a 12 terabyte landscape in just a weekend. For reference on premise, if we were to do something like that, we would have had to build out an entire new data center. It would have taken months and months and months of planning, right? And we were able to flip a switch and do it over a weekend in a standard maintenance window. So it's those kind of benefits that we're seeing. Now, obviously, we're facing an unprecedented time with COVID-19, and all of our businesses are taking a closer look at how are we interacting with our customers, how is the health of our customers, and the cash flows, because cash is king at this moment. We're able to work in detailed analysis for the health of our business with some of the finance data mart capabilities that came with being S/4HANA in cloud. So and not to overlook that part of this new working in the new, right, that we're all experiencing is we're doing all of this remote, right? We're having this podcast remote. We're operating all of these transformational programs that we're doing leading up to our major New Year transformation in September. All of this remote, and we're able to operate that in cloud remotely, which is fantastic. Another thing that it's done, and Anand sees this every day, is that this is generating a lot of interest in the market. Our go-to-market teams are having us speak and engage with different clients to help understand, how are we similar and how can we guide them on their very similar journey here. So there's been a lot of excitement there, a lot of best practices that our teams are generating to really guide both our future roadmap, but really help engage with our clients and show them the way of what's possible and really get them a leg up on starting their journey.
As you said, some really interesting times we're in. And so I guess as we shift to maybe the future, what's next in store for SAP at Accenture?
Yeah, so I think it's important that we've invested in a digital core as our foundation, right? And our landscape and our business needs are always going to evolve. So it's really important that we connect in with SAP and the ecosystem of connecting partners that will grow our capabilities. Microsoft is an example of that, but as we look at capabilities around what SAP Analytics Cloud can offer us, right? It's making sure that connected ecosystem stays rich, that Anand and I stay ahead of what are the options and capabilities that we can share with our business leaders and meet some of their needs, and they're going to guide us as to what to look forward to. But the biggest thing to reflect on is that in our 15 plus years on SAP, we've grown from a business of originally just over 75,000 to now well over 500,000. We were a $9 billion business, and now we're 43 billion plus. And it's an enterprise platform like SAP that enables us to scale while staying on single instance, right? Letting us tap into the new capabilities and new service and offerings, right? As SAP innovates and creates that for the market, but also it's important for us that we continue to invest as an asset, keep our enterprise architecture current, so that we can meet any future business needs that come along our way.
And that's really, a really critical point that you're raising, which is, we're scaled and ready for whatever the future may bring. And you said in just that 15 years, going from 75,000 to over 500,000 people and 9 to 43 billion plus, amazing. And we just don't know what's around the corner. And SAP, especially SAP in the cloud, is certainly giving us that agility and that flexibility to really keep up. And so thanks, Eli, for that. Anand, I'm going to finish with the last question for you today. What would you tell clients looking to move their SAP landscapes to the cloud now?
Jason, what I'd really say to them is what seemed aspirational just a few years ago is really now a reality. We, like many others, had questions about how we could move our full SAP landscape to the cloud. However, through the innovation and the collaboration with our partners, we've proven it's achievable. And all its benefits are really as advertised. So it works. We haven't looked back. Eli and I and our full leadership team, we've embraced this new journey that we're on, and we can see the future with our cloud platform. So, we highly recommend it to anyone out there. It's very doable, and no one will ever say that they regret going to the cloud.
Eli and Anand, I cannot thank you enough for sharing a really fascinating story. Such a critical area. SAP is not an area that I've spent much time in my career personally, but I really admire the great work that you and the team do to look after and chart the course ahead for us in the, as we call it, living in the cloud and living in the cloud with SAP and Azure. Thanks so much for spending the time with us today to share the story.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Jason. Appreciated the time.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you for joining today's podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the Accenture CIO podcast series on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Find the full CIO 24/7 podcast series and additional ways to subscribe at accenture.com/CIO podcast.